I told her I was going on a trip, just to see what she would do when I wasn't around. I never imagined that a simple experiment could turn into a nightmare. My name is Samir, and my wife, Alina, was someone I thought I knew completely, or at least, I wanted to believe I did. We had been married for 5 years, building a life in our small but cozy apartment in the heart of the city. At least, that's what I thought. It started as a test, a foolish idea, perhaps, but one I convinced myself was necessary. Alina had been distant lately, always buried in her phone, texting with an intensity that made my gut tighten. I wanted to see if she would remain faithful, if her words matched her actions. So I planned a business trip for the weekend. Just 2 days, I told her. A harmless trip out of town to attend a conference. She smiled at me that morning, kissed my cheek, and wished me safe travels. There was no suspicion in her eyes, at least, not that I noticed. The air between us felt normal, even warm. Yet something in the way she glanced at the door as I left made a strange unease prick at the back of my mind. I dismissed it. Surely, I was overthinking. But as I drove away, my mind didn't stop racing. I pictured the apartment empty, Alina free to do whatever she wanted. And beneath my curiosity, a darker, uncomfortable thought began to take root. What if she wasn't the woman I thought I married? What if the trust one had placed so fully in her was misplaced? 2 days passed slowly. I kept myself busy, pretending to attend meetings and conferences. But every minute, I imagined her actions at home. Was she alone, bored, lonely? Or, was there something I wasn't seeing, something hidden behind the smile she had given me that morning? On the evening of the second day, I returned earlier than expected, taking a route that allowed me to slip in without being noticed. The apartment was silent when I opened the door, which felt off. Too quiet. My heart thumped with a mix of anticipation and dread. I called out her name softly. No response. And then I noticed it, small signs that made my stomach twist, the living room light left on despite the daytime sun, a glass still warm with a beverage I hadn't poured, and her perfume lingering in a way that didn't match her usual routine. My mind raced. Something had happened here. Something that I wasn't prepared for. I stepped further inside, every instinct screaming that the scene before me would change everything I thought I knew about Alina. The unease turned into a knot of suspicion. My test had become something else entirely. And in that moment, I realized, sometimes, the truth isn't revealed in the moments we imagine, it sneaks up quietly, like a shadow in a familiar room. The first few hours after I returned were a blur of tension and silent observation. Alina wasn't in the apartment, which, at first, I told myself was normal. She could be at the grocery store, catching up with a friend. But something felt off. I noticed little things immediately. Her laptop, usually closed and set aside when she left, was open on the couch, with a series of chat windows minimized. Notifications blinked subtly on the screen, though I had no idea who she had been talking to. I didn't touch it, but the fact it was open unnerved me. Then there were the secret calls. As I prepared coffee in the kitchen, her phone vibrated on the counter. A quick glance at the screen revealed a name I didn't recognize. She picked up, speaking in a low voice, almost hurried. I couldn't hear much, but the tone, it was careful, almost guarded. A strange unease crept into me. Why was she hiding this? Why did the conversation feel secretive? Even her behavior in the following days added to the suspicion. She smiled at me, joked, carried on as usual, but there were subtle inconsistencies. Small excuses for leaving the room, a distracted air, or a sudden meeting that never fully made sense. Nothing concrete, but enough to seed doubt. Money, too, began to feel strange. I noticed unusual charges in our shared account, small amounts, almost trivial, but frequent. She brushed them off casually, mentioning subscriptions or work-related purchases, but something in her explanations felt rehearsed. My gut told me there was more than she was saying. The emotional strain was overwhelming. I found myself second-guessing my perceptions. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid? Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to demand answers, but another part whispered caution. If I acted too soon, without proof, I risked turning suspicion into mistrust, and mistrust into a rift that might never heal. The worst part was the mental exhaustion. Every glance, every text notification, every hushed whisper became a potential clue or a trap. Sleep became restless, my mind endlessly analyzing interactions, searching for patterns. I was desperate for certainty, yet every sign I saw seemed deliberately ambiguous. And then came the lingering feeling, the one that settled in the pit of my stomach when she returned home that evening. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, smiled warmly. Everything appeared normal. Yet beneath the surface, I couldn't shake the sense that something was hidden, just out of reach, behind that familiar smile. It was a subtle unease at first. But I knew, deep down, that the calm I saw was only the surface, and beneath it, a storm might already be brewing. It wasn't until I noticed the faint hum of conversation outside the bedroom door that the truth hit me. My heart raced. I had followed every instinct, yet the betrayal was more personal and shocking than I could have imagined. Alina wasn't just distracted or hiding small secrets. She was involved. Not in vague ways, but in a carefully orchestrated plan that I had been blind to all along. The messages, the secretive calls, the sudden purchases, they all pointed to something deliberate, something calculated. I stood frozen as I overheard her speaking to someone on the phone, her tone casual, almost playful. "Yes, he thinks I have no idea, don't worry, everything is on track. The papers are signed." Papers. Signed. The revelation slammed into me like a tidal wave. I rushed to the living room, heart pounding, and found the truth laid bare. Hidden among her things were documents I didn't recognize, legal forms, financial transfers, property deeds, all pointing to a plan that involved siphoning funds, manipulating accounts, and securing control over assets we shared. My trust, painstakingly built over 5 years, had been exploited. Shock froze me in place. My hands shook. My mind spun. I felt a hot wave of betrayal, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your stomach drop. How could she, the woman I loved and trusted, plan this behind my back? How could the person who had laughed with me, slept beside me, whispered "I love you" every night, be capable of such deception? Anger quickly followed heartbreak. My jaw tightened, fists clenched, and my mind raced through every interaction, every smile, every touch, every casual comment. They all suddenly felt like pieces of a performance I had been blind to. Every moment of warmth was a mask, every affectionate word a lure. Yet even as my emotions swirled, rage, disbelief, sorrow, something else began to take shape. Clarity. I realized that her confidence, her audacity, was her biggest mistake. She had underestimated me. She thought I wouldn't notice, wouldn't act. She assumed that telling me I was going on a trip would buy her time to finalize her scheme. But the truth was now mine. I had seen the pattern, understood the plan, and felt the power of knowledge settle within me. The betrayal was complete, but so was my awakening. I stepped back, breathing deeply, forcing myself to think. Anger alone wasn't enough. Tears alone wouldn't fix this. The time for reaction would come. I could feel it, the moment where I would no longer be the unsuspecting husband, the one being tested. I would become the one in control. And deep down, I knew that when the reckoning came, she wouldn't see it coming. Because sometimes, the most devastating revenge isn't anticipated, it's quietly, patiently, perfectly executed. That night, I sat alone in the dim light of our living room, staring at the documents I had uncovered. Each one was a testament to Alina's deception, transfers I didn't authorize, legal forms signed without my knowledge, plans that could have taken everything we had built together. My chest felt heavy, my mind a tangle of disbelief, sorrow, and fury. For a long time, I just let the emotions wash over me. I remembered her laughter, her whispered promises, the way she had looked at me with what I thought was love. All of it now felt like a cruel act of theater. I had been blind, trusting, and foolish. Then something shifted. Amid the heartbreak, a spark of clarity ignited. She had underestimated me. Every careful step she had taken to hide her betrayal assumed I was naive, complacent, weak. But knowledge had a way of empowering, and now I had the truth in my hands. The anger and sorrow that had threatened to paralyze me transformed into something sharper, resolve. I realized that this wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my control. I had been tested, yes, but the test had backfired on her. I was no longer the unsuspecting husband, I was the one who understood every move she had made, every misstep she had taken. Her confidence, her audacity, her sense of security, it was all a window into her weaknesses. I began pacing, thinking through my options, each step building momentum. First, I needed proof that could stand scrutiny, not just the documents, but the patterns, the hidden trails she had left behind. Second, I needed leverage, a way to expose her plan without tipping her off prematurely. And third, I needed patience. She believed she was in control, and that arrogance would be her downfall. As I sat back down, I looked at the photograph of us on our wedding day, smiling and carefree. I whispered to myself, "You thought you could take everything from me. But the one you betrayed isn't broken," she underestimated me. It was a powerful moment of transformation. The hurt that had clawed at my chest was replaced with purpose. The fear that had once kept me from seeing the truth now sharpened my instincts. I felt my mind clear, focused, and ready. I knew, in that instant, that the coming days wouldn't be about passive suspicion, they would be about action, strategy, and the careful orchestration of justice. She had set the stage for betrayal, and I would use it to engineer the reckoning she never saw coming. For the first time in weeks, I slept that night with a quiet sense of determination. The storm was coming, and this time, I would be the one directing it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That was the hardest part, pretending nothing had changed while everything inside me had. I smiled when she smiled. I asked about her day. I kissed her goodnight. And every time she looked at me with that calm confidence, I reminded myself, she thinks I'm still gone. Step 1 was proof. Not assumptions. Not emotions. Facts. While she slept, I quietly synced her tablet to the cloud account she didn't realize was still linked to mine. Messages poured in, late-night chats, coded jokes, voice notes sent when she thought she was alone. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. There was another man. Someone she trusted enough to plan with. Someone she joked with about how easy I was to fool. My hands shook as I listened, but I kept recording. Every message. Every timestamp. Step 2 was money. I traced the unusual transactions back weeks, small withdrawals, transfers to accounts under names I didn't recognize. I dug deeper and found drafts of legal documents saved under harmless file names. She wasn't just cheating on me emotionally, she was preparing to walk away with assets she had no right to touch. Step 3 was the trap. I let her believe the test had worked. I casually mentioned another upcoming trip. Watched her eyes light up just a little too fast. That was all the confirmation I needed. She was planning something big, and soon. So I gave her space. Freedom. Opportunity. Behind the scenes, I contacted a lawyer. Quietly. I showed him everything, the recordings, the messages, the financial trail. He didn't interrupt once. When he finally spoke, his words were calm and devastating. She's documenting her own collapse. I began setting the final pieces in place. I moved my personal funds. Changed access permissions she didn't know existed. Scheduled a meeting she assumed was routine, one that would bring all the truth into the open at once. And through all of it, Alina remained relaxed. Carefree. Victorious. She laughed louder. Stayed out later. Texted more freely. She thought my silence meant ignorance. She thought the test had proven I was predictable. Weak. Every night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and felt the tension coil tighter. Not rage, control. The kind that comes from knowing the ending while the other person is still acting out the lie. The hardest part wasn't planning the revenge. It was realizing how easily she had betrayed me, and how confidently she believed she'd get away with it. But the stage was set now. The evidence secured. The trap locked. All that remained was the moment she would finally understand. I didn't leave to test her loyalty. I came back to expose her. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, almost unremarkably. Alina came home from work, confident, radiant, believing I had no idea. But as she stepped through the door, the atmosphere had shifted. The calm she took for granted was gone, replaced by a subtle tension she couldn't identify. I led her to the living room, where the laptop sat open, connected to the cloud account she had ignored. You left me a lot of messages, didn't you? I said softly. Her smile faltered, curiosity mixing with unease. I played the recordings. Late-night conversations. Laughing at me behind my back. Coded words that revealed a secret rendezvous, financial manipulations, and even legal documents she had begun drafting to take our shared assets. Her face went pale as the truth filled the room, proof she had assumed I would never find. This, I said, pointing to the screen, is the reality of what you've been doing while I was gone. Every plan, every lie, every betrayal, recorded and documented. She tried to laugh it off, a nervous gesture, but the sound was brittle. Samir. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I replied, voice calm but sharp, the finality unmistakable. I didn't leave to test you. I left to watch. And I came back to expose you. I handed the evidence to a lawyer I had secretly hired, and together we presented it to her family and mutual friends, those who had once assumed my ignorance. Alina's attempts to explain, to rationalize, crumbled under the weight of her own words. Every lie she had counted on to protect herself was now a hammer striking her credibility. Her social circle, shocked by the recordings and the paper trail, recoiled. Texts she had sent in confidence were shared publicly. Friends she had confided in distanced themselves. Her carefully constructed image of innocence dissolved before her eyes. Financial consequences followed swiftly. Transactions she had planned were reversed. Accounts she had accessed were frozen. The assets she had hoped to claim were locked legally, inaccessible, entirely out of reach. Through it all, I stayed composed. Not vindictive, not gloating, just present. The quiet justice of her exposure, the collapse of the empire of lies she had tried to build, was more powerful than any words I could have spoken. Alina sat in stunned silence, realizing that the person she believed powerless had orchestrated her undoing. The one she assumed blind, naive, obedient, had been quietly preparing every move, every evidence, every step toward her reckoning. She had underestimated me. And in that moment, it became undeniable: betrayal has consequences. Trust is precious. And the one who manipulates it most cunningly can also be undone most completely. I stepped back, letting the storm of truth speak for itself. She had tested me. I had returned. And the world had seen the price of deceit. The city felt quieter the next morning. Not peaceful, no, the storm had already passed, but the echoes of truth lingered in the spaces Alina had once filled with deception. She had retreated into silence, her plans exposed, her reputation shattered, and the confidence she had worn like armor completely undone. I walked through the apartment that had been both our home and the stage for her betrayal. Everything felt different, not because the furniture had changed, but because the weight of deceit had been lifted. I was no longer haunted by suspicion, no longer paralyzed by uncertainty. I had reclaimed what she had tried to take: my peace, my dignity, my control over my own life. Friends, colleagues, even family reached out, some cautiously, others with relief and admiration. They had witnessed the unraveling of lies, the exposure of hidden schemes, and the quiet strength it took to let the storm run its course. I didn't boast. I didn't need to. The truth had done the talking. Financially, emotionally, socially, Alina was left to reckon with her actions. What she had assumed were clever maneuvers to secure freedom and advantage had only highlighted her recklessness. And I had learned that strength isn't measured by anger or vengeance alone, it's measured by patience, strategy, and the courage to act when the time is right. I took a deep breath, looking at the life ahead. Free from lies, free from manipulation, and ready to rebuild, I felt stronger than ever. The betrayal that had threatened to break me had forged a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The lesson was clear: trust can be tested, deception can be endured, and when confronted, it has consequences. To anyone watching this, I have to ask, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Felt the sting of deception so deep it shook your world? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you found strength in the face of betrayal. And if you believe that truth and patience can turn even the most personal betrayal into a form of justice, subscribe for more stories of courage, strategy, and reckoning. Because here's the truth I want you to take away: she thought she could deceive me and escape unscathed, but the one she underestimated became the architect of her downfall. Sometimes, the most devastating justice isn't loud or dramatic, it's quiet, precise, and inescapable. And when it strikes, it leaves no room for excuses, only lessons that linger in the soul. I didn't just survive her betrayal. I rose stronger, wiser, and unshakable. And that is the power of truth.